a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world, wait for it, one Om at a time. So, I would like you to welcome you to today's show. Our guest is, and I cannot believe, because we had a little technical difficulty as we started, so I am going to plead the fact that I may mess up the pronunciation of her last name, but it's Mari Cartagenova. Mari, did I get that right?
It's close. It's Cartagenova.
Cartagenova.
So Cartagenova, yeah, but it's pretty close.
Cartagenova, okay. So, but I'm going to call her Mari. Mari is a psychic medium. She is an animal communicator. Mari is a best-selling author with clients from all over the globe, and she specializes in heartfelt messages from both past loved ones and living or past animals. And so I do want to remind people that it is a live call-in show, so you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. Call in. Any questions for Mari or myself, we're more than happy to answer them. What I do see is, and I apologize for this, Mari, what is the best way for people to contact you after the show? Because that somehow did not make it in the write-up.
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is through my website, which is mediummari.com. It's mediummari.com. And you can also find me on all the social media under Medium Mari as well, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. And you can message me there too.
Okay. And mediummari.com. And I'm going to ask you, because I somehow edit, because I want to make sure I get this right. It's mediummari.
That's correct. Yep, mediummari.com.
That's what I thought, but I'm actually putting it so that it is on the Dr. Kevin Show Facebook fan page, so people can find it and click right on that link. I want to make sure you are as clickable and findable as possible.
Thank you.
So, I know later in the show you're going to you asked me to send you some picture of my current feline children. And I'm looking forward to seeing what, if any messages they have for me, because I got a couple messages for them. But before we do that, I'd like you to share a little bit of, a lot of people today feel like they've got psychic abilities. People are more accepting of psychic abilities. Psychic abilities are being more discussed. We're getting TV shows about psychic abilities. I mean, we're in one of those cycles, and these cycles come and go, but we are definitely in a cycle where people, except for the crazy, no fun fundamentalist, are pretty cool and pretty interested in psychic stuff. Can you share a little bit of your psychic history? Like, when did you figure it out? How did it come about? And how were you treated when you first started talking about it?
Well, thanks, Dr. Kevin. That's an interesting question. I mean, my story is, maybe similar to some other people's out there. I mean, ever since I can remember, when I was very little, I would see spirits and I would see angels and I would talk to them, and, it seemed pretty normal to me, but, I was maybe 3 or 4 years old. And then when I got to be a little older, I realized that not everybody was seeing them, and they thought I was a little weird. And so I got made fun of, and my family didn't quite understand what was happening. And so I, at that point, sort of decided to keep this ability to myself. I still certainly connected with the spirit world and was still very involved in it, but just on more of like a personal level. I wasn't telling other people about it. And, like most people, I went out to college. I got a master's degree in social work. I worked as a therapist, had a family. And then, as I got a little bit older, I started getting more and more visitations. And I actually was sitting with, occasionally I would get readings with mediums just to sort of, see what was up. And I was sitting with this medium from the UK, and he looked at me and he's like, well, you're supposed to be doing this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, you're a medium. You're supposed to be doing this. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. So I didn't really believe that it was something I was supposed to be doing. But shortly after that, my grandmother passed away, who I was very close to, and then my aunt. And then I started getting visitations from them. And they were like, you're really supposed to be doing this. And I was like, yeah. But it was almost like my dirty little secret. Like I would talk to spirits and they would talk to me, and I would get information, and I would just have a knowingness about everything. But I wasn't really ready to just share it with the world because of how I was treated when I was younger, just by society in general. And I think a lot of people sort of hide that ability. And so I was on a trip at one point. This was sort of the culmination of everything. And I was in an airport, in the Orlando airport, and I happened to have to use the restroom. And so I walked into, one of those giant restrooms at the airport and picked a random stall, or so I thought. And when I walked into the stall, there was one oracle card that was there. And the only thing the oracle card said was trust. And I literally looked up to the sky, threw my hands up, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to be doing this. And then after that, I just started studying and training, and then everything just sort of snowballed. And, I became, what I currently am now, working in mediumship and animal communication.
So when did the animal communication part of it come online?
Well, it wasn't too much after I started working with spirit, because I had sort of heard through the spiritual community, I don't know if you've heard the same thing, is someone had said to me like, oh, well, it's really hard to do animal communication. And to me, I'm thinking, well, why would it be any harder? I mean, they're spirits just like we are. And so I just thought, all right, well, I'll give it a try. And then I just started connecting with animals. And to me, the way I work with them is not any different than the way I work with spirit. And so it just sort of went from there. I just started doing it, and it worked out well. And I was like, no, for me anyway, it's not any harder than it is working with spirit. And it just sort of incorporated that into work that I currently do.
Yeah, I have never heard anybody talk about animal communication being particularly hard. No one's ever said it to me, but I've been doing the professional psychic stuff since the 70s, and different time periods have different things that people decide that's hard. There was a time when people thought it was hard to talk to dead people. There was a time when people thought it was hard to get clairvoyance. I mean, I see these cycles because I'm old and I've been around forever.
Sure.
But I find it interesting because the only animals I ever have a hard time doing communication with are my own.
Right, of course.
Which I find seem to be more or less like, nope, I can talk to anybody else's animals. My animals, they just kind of, we're mysterious, figure it out.
Exactly. Well, it's sort of like, that's why a surgeon doesn't operate on his own kids, because you're just too close to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And besides, they take great joy in watching me suffer.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but maybe.
So, how long are you, do you do the mediumship and the animal communication full time now? I mean, is this like your gig all the time, or is it something that you're doing and still balancing through doing other things?
Yeah, well, what I like to say is that I'm a mom first, a medium second. So I'm always, the mom of my kids, and that's always number one. But yeah, this is my full-time job. I mean, this is in terms of work, this is what I do. So, I've been blessed. I'm super, super busy. I am booked out a number of months, and so I do as much as I can. I honestly wish I could clone myself, because then I could help more people. But It's just, honestly, it's really a blessing because coming from a background of therapy and working with people in that way, I sort of see this as an extension of that because I am still working with people and helping them to heal. It's just on a multitude of levels now. It's not just therapeutically, but it's also, connecting with spirit and helping providing healing that way.
Yeah, because I always talk about my primary practice as a virtual coach, counselor, and catalyst, and that, sometimes you would look at my practice and you would think that it looks like a therapist practice, and there's aspects of it that would certainly qualify for that, but there's always got that psychic, spiritual, foundational, which allows you to do so much more and go so many other places that traditional therapy kind of handcuffs you over.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So now, one of the things you talked about people saying to you about animal communication was difficult, and you were like, it doesn't make sense to me. And of course, difficult for most things start in people's heads, as you and I both know, right? Like, it's difficult because they think it's difficult.
Sure.
I'm sure you found that a lot as a therapist. But there's another thing out there that I hear a lot, and I'd like to have you weigh in on it and what your perception is. Do you find doing the spiritual work is more, less, or basically the same kind of energy requester? Like takes the same kind of energy stuff as, let's say, you needed being a therapist?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think honestly, and everybody works differently, but for me, it's about the same because when I'm working, I'm like totally open. I'm open. I always start my sessions with, I'm here for you, whatever it is I can help, you help, process these issues with or bring you comfort. Like, that's why I do this. So whether it's working therapeutically or working with spirit, I'm just open and sort of taking everything in and trying to process everything and then, put out what it is they're looking for, whether it's like animal communication or intuitive reading or spirit communication. So it honestly feels the same. And I think just through my training as a therapist, and then I did that for a very long time, all of my sessions are a little therapeutic in nature. And I think the people that are drawn to me are drawn to me partially because of that. But I think the energy output is the same because even, if you're working in therapy, I used to work with people with chronic mental illness, and it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. People are going through a lot, and it's draining. So it's not like, you just finish work and don't take it home with you. I mean, of course you do, because your heart goes out to these people and all of their suffering, and it's sort of hard to turn that off. And certainly working with spirit and working with people in this way is similar, because I'm sure you as well have heard a lot of difficult stories, and especially with the animal piece. And I also work with lost and missing animals, and that, certainly can be very pull on your heartstrings, because there's a lot of grief there associated with that.
Well, because I certainly don't do anywhere near the amount of animal communication work that you do, I suspect. I can do it when it's requested. People don't think of me specifically as, oh, I want to talk to my animal living or dead. Let's go talk to Dr. Kevin. Name on the list. Nor has that ever been, it's always been, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want, I can do it. But I do find that with the mediumship part and being able to talk to people that are crossing over, talking to relatives who have dementia. I don't know how much work you've done with nonverbal or non-communicative, conscious functioning is the only way I can think to put it. But like, I know I've worked with people who have, like adult kids that have never been able to communicate because of like physical, mental, emotional disabilities. Or, I've talked to people where I talk to the person, the parent or the spouse that's in dementia, but can talk to them. Do you find that those are things that you also are called to do a lot in your practice?
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been called on to do because certainly, like I have a client that come to me just recently was talking about her mother who also has dementia and how she's seeing spirits and sort of being able to sort of tap into that energy because like like energy is all the same regardless of whether you're alive, you're crossed over, you're an animal, you're a plant even, for some people. It's still energy. So being able to tap into that is very helpful. So I certainly have worked with people with dementia or people that, might be on the spectrum that have crossed over or certain things like that just communicate in a different way. Because all that really matters is that it's really just about the energy, and the energy is what I'm connecting with. So whether, they're sort of half here or half in the other world or communicating in different ways, it doesn't really matter. And the same thing with animals, because people say, oh, how can you communicate to animals? It's like, well, they have a soul. We all have a soul, and we're all energy, and that's how the communication works. So, yeah, I've certainly done that, and it's, my clients find it very helpful because, they're not able to communicate to them, whereas coming to someone like me or you are able to get some of those messages.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you, and I know that we're kind of up to our first break. I looked at the clock and said, but we're getting ready to go on break. We will be right back with Medium Mari at mediummari.com here on the Dr. Kevin.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from New Thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. We have a live call-in show. We have a fascinating guest, Mari Cartagenova, mediummari.com. That's mediummari.com. And we're having some great conversations, and you are invited to participate by calling in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. So, Mari, I had a couple of questions for you as we were kind of going to break, so I'm going to throw them right out.
Okay.
So the first one is because I was talking to you about like how much energy you took, and you said it didn't take much more. You felt like it was the same energy block like therapy. So, what would you say? Like, what's the perfect more or less number of hours to see and clients for a week? Like, just what feels like this is healthy but not exhausting, but it's enough to make me feel like I'm kind of working at my best?
Yeah, I mean, I think that number varies from person to person. I mean, for me personally, I don't like to do more than 4 hours a day of clients because that feels like a lot to me. And I have to make sure that, there's breaks in between each one because I sort of want to shed the energy of one person before I dive right into the next session. But I think about 4 hours a day personally. During the work week is a lot in terms of doing whether it's animal communication or spirit communication, because it definitely as you need to save your energy. You really need to make sure that your gas tank is gassed up and that you're sort of ready to dive in. And for me, I find if I do more than that, I'm just really exhausted. So and then of course you have the whole social media aspect of it and interviews and all that. So you have to save time for that as well. And, there's just, it never ends, as you probably know, trying to promote and put everything out there. And so you sort of have like the housekeeping part and the actual work part. So it definitely makes for a very full week.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes I try to explain that, but I'm always kind of curious because it's such a wide variety from people that, that I talk to. And again, this is all observational. None of this is criticism. We're all different. We all function different ways. But, I find a lot of people that are like, oh, if I do a couple of hours of clients a day, I'm beat, I'm dead, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, and then I find that there are people that can regularly do 6, 8, 9 hours of clients a day in and day out. So it's an interesting spectrum that I just always find curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, everybody's life experiences are different. Like if you live alone versus if you have, I have my family. So I always have to, they're always my number one priority. So I have to make sure I save a little bit of energy for them. It just depends on the total package, your total circumstances about how much you can do and how much time you have to commit as well. And everybody should do what's right for them.
Oh, absolutely. You've mentioned a couple of times family. So how many kids do you have?
I have 3 children. We are very close, and I'm very proud of them. And, like I said, being a mom is the best job ever, and the number one thing that I like to do. So, for us, sitting down and having a family meal every night is important, and, doing family activities. And so, that's really a priority. And, that time is limited that you get to be with them. So, I always want to make sure that is on the top of my list.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask. And if you're not comfortable saying, that's fine. But so how old? What are the ages?
Well, I don't want to get into specifics because I don't really talk about my personal life very much, but I'll just say that they all live at home. So I have 3 kids at home. And so, they definitely take up a lot of my time and driving different places and practices and, sports events and all that kind of stuff. So, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's the number one thing that's the most important to me. And so that's number one. And then my work is second.
That's great. I think that's fabulous. And I think that there needs to be more people in, whether it's as a spiritual coach, counselor, and catalyst, or a therapist, or some crossover, or, self-care is so important. And balance of life is so important. And, it's hard when you have these gifts and that they can help so many people. It's hard sometimes to say no. And then, like you said, there's still the business of running the business. It doesn't go away. If you want to have a spiritual business.
Did I lose you? Are you still there?
No, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, you dropped out for a second there. Can you repeat your question?
Oh, it wasn't a question. It was a comment. I was just saying that it's so important for people that are doing work to have self-care, that, that it's hard because the world can be a very, needy of people like ours talents. And so it's hard sometimes because you want to help, but then you have to think, but I have to take, I have my family, I have my things to take care of. And I think self-care is so important. So.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And that was, I was thinking about that when I was looking at the list of questions that you like to ask your guests. And, self-care is like so critical. But I really think in our world, a lot of times people talk about self-care, but don't actually practice self-care. And, I may or may not have been guilty of that myself, because it's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to go do this. And then I end up okay, I wanted to today, I wanted to sit outside just, for half an hour, sit in the sun, get a little vitamin D going. And I think I sat outside for 3 minutes because I just didn't have any time. I was just trying to make everything work. And so I think there's a big difference between talking about self-care and actually implementing self-care. So yeah, it's critical. It's more than important. It's critical.
Yep. Well, I find that my big thing is doing multitasking self-care. I do a lot of clients on the phone, so I go walk in the woods. So I get my exercise, I get my woods time, I'm talking to clients, but I'm almost like replenishing as I'm giving it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have days when I will have walked 10 or 12 miles in a day.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep. So I guess sometimes it is about finding creative ways to get the self-care. So my next question for you, and it's so funny, I'm going to apologize right now because all my guests get these 3 questions I'm going to ask, and be prepared to answer them. And sometimes I'm drawn to just go right into, where do you want to take our listeners outside the box? Where do you want to take them behind the curtain? And Mari got those questions and she studied them. Of course, I'm not asking.
I know, and I did. I wrote down the answers. I have a sheet with written answers. I was been studying, so I'm like, when are the questions coming? I'm ready.
Okay, so we'll do this. You did your homework. The least I can do is, the trouble is I've gotten so used to people that aren't prepared that sometimes I end up not asking the questions. But let's start. So on all of these questions, and I know you've already prepared, but I always like to say, this can do about anything at all. It can do about psychic mediumship. It can do about your feeling about, how the Red Sox are doing this year. If there's something you have to add, I never want anyone to feel like it's limited to just quote unquote whatever is in their bio. Because I think what makes people interesting are all the quirks. And I think sometimes that what makes somebody choose a practitioner is they feel like they have a connection. Those people have ideas or whatever. And so they say, I want to talk to some dead people. And I was listening to Mari and like, yeah, you and I were like, that's who I'm going to go to talk to my dead people. And you may not have been talking about dead people. So where do you want to take our listeners outside the box?
Well, it just so happens I tried to mix it up a little bit in terms of the answers to the questions. And so my answer to that is in terms of outside the box, and I thought it was an appropriate thing to say, sort of globally as well as for the work that we do, is that we don't die. That's one of the number one questions people say. Are they okay? Are my loved ones okay? Are my pets okay? There is no death. Yes, there is death of the body. I like to say that our body is sort of like the, whether it's furry or not, this is sort of the outfit that we have to walk around on Earth this time around. And when you cross and then you come back, because I believe in reincarnation, you get another outfit to wear. So the soul and the spirit does not die. And I think that's really important for people to know, because many times, I'm sure when you meet with clients, they're like, well, are my loved ones okay? And where are they? And all of those questions are all wrapped up in the fact that we are energy and we are continuous throughout time, throughout eons, and we will never die. We are always around, just in different forms. And it's important that people understand that, and that once we cross out of this body is, on the other side, wherever that is, you want to look up or look down or wherever you think it is, it's all about love. That's really ultimately, in my experience of this work, it is just about love. And it's when we're here on this earth, this is the difficult place. This is where the lessons are. This is where the things we need to learn are that happen. And, when in the crossover state, in the energy, in the source state, it's just love. So no one is suffering. Everybody is okay. Your animals are okay. And they're not alone also. I had a client today that was saying, well, is my little dog, is he okay? Is he by himself? And I said, well, nobody's by themselves on the other side. It's not like you just show up on the other side and there's just a big empty room and silence. There's many souls and many animals and many people, and you're welcome with love. And, my experience with doing this work, and that's what it's really about. And I think if there is any takeaway for people listening to the show, is just know that there is no death. There's a transition to different forms, but your loved one, that soul, that energy is always alive, as well as you. You will always be alive in some form and continue forever.
You see, and if somebody says, are my animals okay? Are my people okay? Is my whatever, where are they? I always go, Las Vegas, of course. What do you think heaven is? Life is a gamble, after all, right?
That is very true. That is very true.
They're betting
Las
on the
Vegas
roulette
being
wheel.
One of my favorite places. Yeah, exactly. They're playing roulette. Usually, and you probably know this, is that when people cross over, they just end up doing whatever activities they love the most, whether it's gardening or whether it's being in Las Vegas, in an energetic way. They're just enjoying themselves. Because that urge and things to do fun things doesn't go away. It just takes place in a different way. So so absolutely. For some people, I'm sure heaven is Las Vegas. Put it all on red. So
I actually taught several years in a row, 5 times a year. I taught at a MBA level boot camp for entrepreneurs in Las Vegas. So 5 times a year, I'd be in Las Vegas for 2 weeks, teaching 10 of those days and then playing 2 days on each side. So I got
very cool.
Yeah, I got my Las Vegas cred. Okay, so that's great. I mean, I love that. Obviously, it's just, I try to talk to people sometimes to get them to also understand that life is nothing but about a series of deaths and rebirths, and death and rebirth. And we see this pattern over and over again in life. As simple as, you get baby teeth and you lose baby teeth, and then you get adult teeth. And if you lose adult teeth, you get root canals and dentures. But there's always it's always a death and rebirth, And
Exactly.
And that goes on. It went on and brought us into this life, and it goes on as we go out of this life. That it's just another death to lead to another rebirth.
100%.
So the question is, I like to ask because the next question is, where would you like to take the people behind the curtain? Do you remember or know where that line came? Ignore the man behind the curtain.
Of course I do. That's from The Wizard of Oz.
Yep. And one of the reasons I chose to name this segment this way, this question, is that actually what was behind the curtain was a shyster from Kansas who, bumbled his way in. And yet everybody gave their power away to him because of his illusion. And so that's why in this case, I love to have people talk about, where do you think we're giving our power away to an illusion? Where do you think we're getting scammed these days? Whether it's around your personal issues or other issues. I know you've already written your answers, but that's okay. I just like to throw that out. We are going on our second break. When we come back, we'll get the answer to that. And the last question, and then I'm going to see what my cats have to tell me. I'm here with Medium Mari, which is mediummari.com. And we'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
If I could be you.
And you could be me.
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the last segment of the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. Remember, this is a live call-in show. Feel free to call in at 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. Today's guest is Medium Mari at mediummari.com. She is a psychic medium, an animal communicator, and is a trained therapist. And above all things, we don't want to get in trouble with Mari. She's a mother.
That's true.
Hey, you know, I learn. I'm a little slow, but I can pick up on these priorities here.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Where did you want to take our listeners behind the curtain?
Behind the curtain. Now, is this what we're talking about, truths that have been misrepresented? Is that the question that we're on?
Yes, it is.
You know, I alluded to it a little bit earlier about the self-care piece, because I really think that a lot of times people talk about it, but they really don't do it. So it's almost like, what it feels to me is like an Instagram moment. Everyone's like, oh, I'm meditating or I'm taking my bubble bath. But from what I see in the world and just for experiencing people as they are, I think very few people take the amount of time for self-care that is necessary, and for mental health, mental self-care. I think they give a lot of lip service to it. And like I said, even including myself sometimes, because it takes an extraordinary amount of time to give yourself to really be in a balanced place. Because think about all the time you would have to spend. It would be like going to the gym and eating right and taking your supplements and being outside. And in our crazy world where people are commuting and going to fast food and McDonald's and all that kind of stuff, I really don't think that the amount of self-care that should be going on is. And so that it really seems to me that it's really untrue when you see all these posts of people saying, oh, I'm relaxing in my garden. It's like, yeah, well, how long did you spend setting up that shot of you relaxing in your garden? You know, there probably wasn't a lot of relaxing going on. It was probably more just, you know, setting stuff up for your, you know, for your media, for your Instagram. So I think honestly that people are misrepresenting themselves in the amount of time that they take care of themselves, and it's to their own detriment, and ultimately it's to our world's detriment if you look around and see all the craziness that's going on, because we're not putting on our own oxygen mask first, and we really need to do that.
I couldn't agree more, and I invite the listeners to remember you can get creative with your self-care, and you have to decide what self-care looks like for you. You know, self-care for me, yeah. I have my hot tub and my garden, and I have my woods I walk in, but we have to decide what self-care looks like. And, I think that, as you said, and I find it myself, it's like, okay, can I go to the gym today and work in the garden today and sit in the hot tub today and see all the clients I have scheduled and do the stuff I have to do to keep my business and have dinner on the table for my husband, which is one of the things that is self-care for me, is I feed things.
Me too.
I feed squirrels, birds, cats, husbands. I feed things.
Same thing. Me too. I've got my squirrel feeder and my bird feeder and my garden. Same thing. I think we're living the same life almost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's great. So I am going to actually ask you. You got some pictures of my cats. I'm going to ask you to comment on the cats so I can make sure that I hear that, because I'm being selfish now. This is a self-care thing. And then after that, with the time we have left, we'll see how you want to answer the last question. How does that sound?
Sure, it sounds great. And let me just say that self-care is not selfish. It's not selfish at all. It's important to take care of oneself. So you're not being selfish. So I do have your kitties here. Now I have the white one with the gray mask. What's that kitty's name?
Her name is Freya, fertility goddess, mother of Thor. And I'm rubbing her belly right now as we're talking.
Oh, Freya, very nice. Well, it's interesting because as I get very different energy from both of the cats. And, as I'm connecting to her, I feel very much, it's almost like, I almost get like a yin and a yang from her. I feel like sometimes she can be protective of you and wants to be near you. And then sometimes she's just annoyed. She's just like, nope, that's enough for me. Sorry. And you go do your own thing. That's sort of the vibe that I'm getting from her. And it's interesting because I feel like, because she's talking about, there's some piece about not trusting you. Not like not trusting you that you're going to hurt her, but there's like a piece of her that she's holding back. Like, do you understand that?
So you're very correct about her personality. Even as I was rubbing her stomach, when she decided she was finished, she decided to bite my hand.
Exactly.
When we got her and her sister when they were very young, I mean, they were just like 6 weeks born, and we got them at the same time. But her sister was sick, and the first day and a half to 2 days that they were here, I was literally had her sister cuddled on my heart chakra, like loving on her, having to clean her up because she kept on getting sick and washing her, stuff like this. And so my whole attention was really focused on Morgana, her sister, because she was sick. And and so my husband focused all of his attention on Freya. And ever since then, it's been like Freya is more his cat and Morgana's more than mine. But, she was sick. So I don't know if that's where she doesn't quite trust me comes from.
Yeah, because that's what she was saying. It's like again, it's not like that you're going to hurt her, but it's just I keep feeling like she's withholding a part of herself because she doesn't feel like somehow it's going to be reciprocated. Or it makes sense because you were spending time with Morgana. I guess that's the black one, the other cat.
Yep.
Because she's sort of like, I don't really want to give my heart to you totally because I'm afraid it's going to be broken. And it's interesting because with both of them, I do feel like trauma with them. So I don't know if they were like rescued out of some bad situation or something, but I do feel they both have a little bit of that. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not going to come to you right away. And, just like everybody is, that all animals are different. They all have different personalities. But they do definitely have that, I'm not sure if I'm going to trust you vibe, just coming out of the box, because they're just not sure. And to me, that feels like a little bit of trauma from when they were growing up.
So yeah, they were. I mean, I don't know what their history before us, but like I said, we got them as kittens, so they were like 6 weeks old, and we got the two of them because Jeff and I both looked at Morgana. We could tell that she was the smallest cat. Almost all the rest of the kittens were ignoring her. We could tell she wasn't feeling well. She wasn't as playful. I was like, that's the runt of the litter. That's the struggling one. And my husband and I looked at each other and said, yep, well, so we have our first one picked out. You know, we're gonna take the frail, sick, isolated kitten and make sure she has a good home. But Freya was protecting Morgana. I mean, like, she would go back and check on Morgana. All the rest of their siblings ignored her, but she'd go and kind of check, and she like nosed food over to her once to make sure that she ate. And I said, well, obviously those two are more bonded, so therefore we're going to take both of them. But Freya was the second choice. And, you know.
Right, exactly. And I think there's still some like residual feeling about that. I mean, not like, of course, you know, not everybody can be first. I mean, you can't pick them both first, but so it almost feels like there's a residual, like, I'm not really totally sure about you. Like, I'm happy to be here, but there's a but, you know, it's not just like, oh, I love you and you're great. You know, it's not like that. There's like I'm not sure. And it's interesting with Morgana. It's like, I understand her frail start, but she's very powerful. She has a very powerful, deep energy, you know, almost like the ocean when I connect with her. And there's definitely a lot of gratitude there for taking care of her, for rescuing her. But it's almost like, you know, she wants to kind of watch over the whole house. She wants to make sure everything is okay. So I see her as sort of like watching from a distance, making sure everything is okay. Is that all right? And it's also interesting because she's talking to me and telling me, like, she's very particular about things. She wants like this to be a certain way and that to be a certain way. Like, is that okay? All right, I'll let you know if that's okay. Because she just has almost like a regalness about her. So I connect with that deep and very, very strong energy with her.
Well, interestingly enough, she's the one that is most likely to pee outside of the litter box. We had it took us a long time to finally get a setup that she would pee only with a pad over the kitty litter in the litter box.
Well, because it has to be to her liking. So if it's not, and you know, it's interesting because like I'm not getting with her, you know, and this is mean to say, but one of my cats is like this. It's like some of them are just obnoxious. Like one of my cats, he'll look me dead in the eye. There'll be a glass of, you know, water or something, and he'll like knock it over. It'll crash in the ground, and he'll be like, and like that sounds like a you problem. So he kind of is obnoxious about it. But the energy that I'm getting from Morgana, it's not that way. It's not like, you know, in an obnoxious way. She's just like, no, it like almost like she's a queen a little bit. Like it has to be a certain way. This is just how it's supposed to be. Like that's just like the rule, but not in a rude way. It's just like I want it a certain way, and you just have to make it a certain way, and that's all.
So, I have clients that come to my home office, and I will do energy work on them. And sometimes, occasionally, both cats will help. But if only one is going to help, it's always Morgana. And like, you know, like if I'm working at one part of the body and there is an issue with another part of the body, I will watch Morgana go over and lay across where there is another issue. So it's like, I'm working on one issue, she's working on the other. And we'll work around the table, but both of them at times will hop on the table, curl up, put their paws somewhere as I'm working on somebody. And I always say to my clients, the kitty healing was free. It's thrown in. It's, you know.
Yeah, well, it's almost like she's a crystal, you know. She's like a healing crystal, you know. But yeah, absolutely. Super. Of course, animals are super tuned in anyway, but I think especially her. And I keep hearing Egypt with her. Egypt. There's some piece about her being connected to ancient Egypt, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but that's what they keep mentioning to me as well. But for sure, I could see her being a healer in a past life. And it's like, because she knows where to go. You know, there's like that. It's interesting how she started out so frail and how you rescued her. And now she's like this magnificent, strong, energetic healer, you know, how she's just transformed, you know, almost like a phoenix in the ashes. And because that's the energy she's very much putting out. And I can just imagine being with her is extremely healing.
Yep. And she is the one that is definitely of the two, she is more aggressively affectionate. Both these cats are affectionate. Both of these cats look at every friend, family member, or client that walks in this house, and they kind of look at him and go, "Oh, look, you got me a new play toy."
Right,
Lovely.
right, exactly.
Right?
Right.
This is all about me, right?
Yeah, well, of course it is, and it should be. You know, I would say all animals should be spoiled, but she especially has that. You know, well, of course you're. You know, and I don't know if that's where the Egypt thing is coming from, but of course you're supposed to worship me. You know, like of course, like that. I feel that definitely much stronger than with Freya, because she just has that a really deep presence. Her energy is super strong.
Yep. Well, and we have some Egyptian statuary in the house that's intermingled among our Buddhist, Hindu, you name it. We have every religion in the world represented in our house.
Cool.
Okay. Any complaints or messages that they have for me, or things that my husband or I should be aware of that would make their lives better?
Well, it's interesting as you're mentioning that, because I just heard from Morgana. Is there a piece about the food? Did you switch the food recently? Because she's talking about wanting a different kind of food. So I don't know if you were doing mostly dry, because she's talking to me about wet food, about having more of the wet food, or if you had a different brand before and she wants the old brand back.
Yeah, she's being very picky because I did just switch the wet food.
Okay. Well, she said she doesn't like it and she wants the other one.
And so she wants the other wet food, though I have a case of this wet food.
Yeah, well, of course. That's how it works.
Yes, of course. Morgana wants the other wet food. She doesn't like the brand switch.
I'm sorry, I'm just the messenger.
Nope, I'm not blaming you. I was actually just sharing it with me because my husband walked in the room. So I want to thank you so much for sharing those messages. What fun. I want to let people know again, because I know we're going to be closing up any minute now. We'll hear the closing thing. So I want to give one more plug. Today's show is with medium Mari Cartagenova. Close, yeah, Cartagenova. But the important thing to remember is mediummari.com. You can go to mediummari.com or find Medium Mari on all of the social media platforms that she deems to grace us on, which I suspect at least is Instagram, because I know we're connected on Instagram. You're on TikTok now too, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, please follow me on TikTok. I'm on all the ones. Instagram, TikTok, I have 2 Facebook pages, Twitter. Just put in Medium Mari. You'll find me everywhere.
And I love the branding. I always say, if you are on any social media platform, if I'm there, it's my Dr. Kevin. So it's really great to have that kind of branding. It makes you easy to find. It'll have easier for our listeners to find. So if you'd like to find out what your animals are thinking, if you would like to talk to some loved ones that have passed over or get some messages from the other side, please think about going to mediummari.com or Medium Mari in Facebook page or Instagram or any of the other places. Mari, thank you for being on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Oh, my pleasure. It was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good night, and we will see you next week for our planetary influences. Let's see what the stars hold in store for us now.